Well, it's a tale of two places on the road to recovery. In New Jersey today, you can dine indoors with social distancing restrictions. But in New York City, indoor dining still on hold, and there is no firm plan for it to resume. News 4's Andrew Siff spoke with New York City leaders, but we start with News 4's Brian Thompson, who's live in New Brunswick, New Jersey, to show us how day one of indoor dining went. Brian, owners face a lot of obstacles, right?
Oh, a lot of obstacles, a lot of rules, and a lot of concern by the governor, who is worried still about a spike or an increase in coronavirus cases. But he has to be happy about this. So far, what we're seeing is that a lot of people are voting to sit outside with their knives and forks.
You guys ordering?
Yeah.
Takeout, not eat in, still the order of the day for many restaurants. Tables and chairs at Gong Ona, still a jumble. When sorted out in the next few days, seating capacity of 25 will mean only 5 people can eat at 2 tables.
Soon enough, we'll be doing indoor dining once I'm able to make the employees here feel safe.
But don't count on many customers to rush through the doors to sit down. Many we spoke with worried about COVID cases.
They're still climbing, and I prefer them to be lower before I feel safer.
At least a couple of months.
At least a couple of
Yeah.
months before you'll eat inside?
Yes.
For others, maybe not so long.
It might take me about a week, but maybe.
Give yourself a little time?
Yeah.
Restaurants such as Filippo's Famous Pizza, in business for nearly half a century, have already taken most, if not all, of the nearly 5 dozen safety precautions the governor laid down. But the governor is worried about the handful who might not.
The limits we have placed on capacities and the public health protocols we have put in place are not kind suggestions. They are mandated. They are required. We will not tolerate any violations, and we will not be afraid to come down hard and make an example of those who think the rules don't apply to them.
But even with the precautions here, Filippo's doesn't expect to fill many of these tables for a while.
Maybe like in a couple of weeks it might be, since a lot of things are still opening and people are still trying to get back into the groove and everything.
And around the corner at Panico's, outside dining was popular. Inside was empty when we visited. And the hostess told me inside reservations were slim.
We had 2 for today at 12 in the morning, and then we have a couple like for the night.
Of course, what we don't know yet is how many of the couple tens of thousands of restaurants in New Jersey will not reopen. The State Restaurant Association saying expects many, thousands of them, will fold for good, as we've heard in predictions for New York City. That remains to be seen. How many can even struggle to reopen with just the 25% capacity limit? Live in New Brunswick, Brian Thompson, News 4 New York.
We have a lot ahead of us here, Brian. Thanks. Well, some people will round out date night in New Jersey with a movie, because New Jersey movie theaters also reopened today. Attendance capped at 25% capacity with a max of 150 people. Masks are mandatory for employees and for customers. Groups are allowed to sit together, but everybody else has to sit 6 feet apart. The same rules apply to indoor performance venues. Now, while there was momentum in New Jersey, there's frustration for restaurants in New York City. Mayor de Blasio promised a plan for indoor dining in September. Small business owners want to know where it is. News 4's Andrew Siff live in Midtown with some new information about what leaders say is holding back the city. Andrew.
Right. Well, Natalie, the mayor said in September there's still 26 days left, and restaurant owners are super frustrated because they say they need, for their very survival, to get that information as soon as possible.
We gotta have a plan of where we're aiming.
Inside the tiny kitchen of Beyond Sushi on 56th Street, it's been takeout and delivery and a handful of tables outside. The indoor chairs stacked up and unused for months. And the owner says where his business really got hammered in the pandemic is his bigger location.
I have a 3,000 square feet restaurant on 37th Street and Broadway. It's doing 4% of what he used to do before.
So he and others in the food industry are pushing harder for the governor, mayor, and city council to give them guidance. Andrew Ridgey of the Hospitality Alliance, representing thousands of eateries, insists people's livelihoods are at stake.
The clock is ticking. Small business are closing. There's 160,000 workers that are still out of jobs in restaurants. So, you know, we got to get this quickly.
I don't want to lose our restaurants.
Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer is on the governor's reopening task force. Still unclear why Westchester and Nassau counties have been allowed to reopen indoor dining, and now New Jersey, but not the city.
We're feeling like a little island here. and I think it's time to open.
Governor Cuomo this week hinted he's open to indoor dining if the NYPD steps in to enforce capacity limits. I asked the mayor about that on Thursday.
Otherwise, you're inviting a problem. Your response to that?
I'm just not going to engage that. Let's get to the work of figuring out what is healthy and safe for New Yorkers.
And Gail Brewer, who's on the governor's reopening task force, also said she doesn't like the idea of the NYPD being in charge of compliance. She said that's what the health department inspectors are for. We're live in Midtown. Andrew Siff, News 4 New York.
All right, Andrew, thanks. From restaurants to schools in the Bronx today, we were invited inside the Immaculate Conception School, where strict coronavirus rules will be in place. In just a few days, Catholic school students in the city will be returning to class. Now, there will be smaller class sizes starting next Wednesday. You will also see temperature checks, mask requirements, and social distancing guidelines for grades K through 8. We talk with one teacher who says consistency will be key here, especially with our younger students.
Showing them, teaching them that there's a routine, teaching them that there is a system. And I think, like I said, when they're young, they attain everything. They absorb everything.
The principal says all students will be taking class in person except for 40 whose parents opted for full remote learning. She says contact tracing and quarantine measures are in place in case there are any positive cases of coronavirus. A warning from Westchester County tonight about a possible COVID-19 exposure. 2 priests and a staff member at a Pleasantville church have tested positive for the virus. Anybody who attended Mass at Holy Innocents Church on the days listed on your screen here might have been exposed. The cases were traced back to a First Communion service, but anyone who went to the services is being asked to quarantine.
If 400 people were exposed and they don't take action to sort of seal off the infection during those numbers of people and they multiply out, we'll have a revisitation of what we saw in March.
Phelps Hospital in Sleepy Hollow is available for testing for anybody who was exposed. Those who test negative are still being asked to quarantine.